This is the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. And today we're talking to somebody who is one of 61 people ever in the history of the world to be the winning pitcher in Game 7 of the World Series. And the only thing he may love more than baseball is duck hunting. We're talking to Jay Powell on today's show.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks.
Jay, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. It's quite an intro.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of looked that up. I got curious because I knew you were on the hill in the last inning, extra innings of Game 7 of the World Series, 1997 for the Florida Marlins. I thought, well, I wonder how many others have been a winning pitcher. And that's the number, 61 Game 7 winning pitchers ever. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, the first time I thought about it was the night after during the game, a guy from ESPN came up and he stuck a camera in my face and, he's talking about it. And he said, how does it feel to be the winning pitcher in Game 7 of the World Series? And I said, well, for me at the time, I didn't, I said, well, it really could have been any of us. I just happened to be the guy. And he said, well, you realize there's only been like a handful, whatever. So then it kind of hit me a little bit, but it's something obviously special. But we had a great bullpen, and I honestly was just the right guy at the right time toward the end.
Yeah, World Series rings and that, a decade in the major leagues, and we'll touch on all that. But you're from Mississippi.
Right.
When I was looking it up, it said you were born in Meridian. Take me back to sort of your roots and who got you into hunting, fishing, that sort of thing as a kid.
Well, I was born in Meridian, grew up in Collinsville. I actually grew up in Martin, which is a suburb of Collinsville, which is a suburb of Meridian, so you have to kind of go on down. But I'm going to be honest, man, I loved baseball. Like, I loved it. I would hit rocks in my driveway and pretend I was Dale Murphy and all this. We had a little pond behind our house that my grandfather owned, and we'd, go in there and brim fish and bass fish. We had some land, so we'd squirrel hunt and that kind of stuff. My dad worked a lot. My mother worked a lot. I had a cousin, and he and I hunted and fished a lot together, and his dad took me a lot. And I just always kind of, for me, it was always secondary to baseball. And, as I got older and become kind of more independent, I started hunting more and more, and I started doing more of those things. And, but I've always, since I was a kid, you just kind of grew up doing it and growing up loving it. And it's become almost a sickness now with duck hunting and deer hunting and fishing and stuff, but it's I love it, and I hopefully have passed it on down to my kids also.
Sure. And what I'm curious about, so you leave high school. Of course, you were drafted out of high school, but went on to college at Mississippi State, played for Coach Polk. And I know from a football standpoint, but from a baseball standpoint, when you're a baseball college athlete, that's you in the early '90s. When was there time to go fishing, go hunting?
There's not a lot.
Yeah.
You know that in football. We would have the Christmas break, and we'd come home and hunt a little bit, but you just don't have time. Everybody talks about me as much as I love duck hunting and calling ducks. Said you'd love turkey hunting, but I've never got into it because I've always been playing baseball.
Right.
So you really don't have time, to be honest with you. And then once you get into pro ball, with me, I had that off season. And, my agent would always tell me, you got this short window to play professional baseball. You got the rest of your life to hunt, and I get it. But
he was trying to motivate you.
He was trying to keep me motivated, and I didn't have a problem with that. But you really don't have, and as college is tough, man. You can find a couple places up there you could go, but for the most part, it's hard to get away.
Yeah, it really is as an athlete, because pretty much year round. If you're not in season in baseball, you're playing fall ball.
Right.
If you're not in fall ball, you're playing, Cape Cod or summer ball.
Yep.
Did you do the summer ball stuff in college?
My freshman year, I went to USA team.
Okay.
And the coach was Ron Polk, and he cut me. And we always talk about it. We could make an all-star team out of the folks he's cut. And then after that, I went to Alaska and played summer ball in Alaska, which is awesome. Yeah. And it was funny because Darren Dryford, who became a good friend of mine, Darren was the second pick in the draft my year, and he got cut by Coach Polk, so he came up there too. But we ended up in Alaska together, and it was awesome, man. It really was. We lived with a family up there, and it never really got dark. So after the game, we'd go fishing, we'd hang out. So it was a cool summer.
That is really neat.
But then you go back, and that was before back then during the fall there was no rules as far as practice. So there'd be a lot of times he'd call the dorm where we all ate, and he'd say, "Hey, keep the cafeteria open. They'll be over there in a minute." I mean, you'd start at 1 picking up rocks out of the infield, and you'd finish at 8. So you just didn't have a lot of time for that.
Right, back in those days. And so the college career for you culminated as, one of the best pitchers in the country, obviously. First round draft pick in the 93 Major League Draft by the Orioles. And here you go. And now that pro career begins. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we're going to get to a time in your life where you're able to do all the hunting and fishing you wanted to do. But there again,
I still ain't got there.
You weren't there at that point. Now it's really getting serious.
And pro ball allows you to meet people. So we were able to meet folks and open up doors to being able to, we would go duck hunting in Arkansas. We'd go deer hunting in South Texas. So the off seasons, once you get in the pro ball, especially once you get in the major leagues, you get a lot more somewhat freedom. Then you still have your workout, still have your stuff to prepare yourself for the season. But, I would, back my rookie year, I'd go chase ducks in the mornings on refuges and everywhere else. And, before I had kids, I'd come back, take a nap, and then go work out in the afternoons. So once you get to pro ball, you start getting some free time to do stuff like that. I'll never have all the, if it's up to you, do it every day. But you have some responsibilities as a husband and a father and a coach. So
when they're paying you to strike people out and that sort of thing. So drafted in the first round, 93. That'd be in the middle of the summer, I'm assuming. And then you make your major league debut in 95. Were you a full 2 years removed from being drafted, or was it less than 2 years actually from the time you went up?
My draft was kind of weird. Nobody signed really until later. Okay. So I signed about end of June, July. So I only spent about a month in A-ball. The next year they sent me to, let me back up. That winter they wanted me to go play winter ball. So they sent me to Australia. So I spent, me and my wife Candace were going to get married that spring in 94. Well, we said, look, we got an opportunity to go to Australia together. So this was in August. Well, we planned the wedding in about 6 weeks.
Really?
And got married middle of September, went on about a 2-day honeymoon, come back, packed, and went to Australia for 4 months. Played winter ball over there, came back, and then I went to high ball with the Orioles. Problem I had with Baltimore was they had a rule where they said they wanted every pitcher to have 300 innings before they considered bringing him up to the major leagues. Well, I had thrown 80-something that year at state. Got drafted, threw 30 more in pro ball. So then I went to winter ball. I threw 80 more. So by the time I hit my time at going into spring training, which I hadn't had a break, I was up to almost 180 innings.
Wow.
So then I threw another 120-something in A-ball. So by the end of the year, my velocity had just hit, I was 86, 87, and they were wondering what's wrong with me. And I was like, guys, I'm up to 300 innings now, counting my college season, and I have not taken a break. But they didn't see it that way, and they ended up trading me actually that off season to the Marlins. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because they got me and they said, look, you're a reliever, you're a closer, a high leverage guy. We're going to stick you in the pen and let you roll. And, as they say, the rest is history.
The rest is history. So then the workload went down, I guess, overall, and the velocity went up.
I kind of got back to myself. I was 95, 96, stuck me in AA. I was, the Marlins pitcher of the year, and I was up in the big leagues in September, and that was it.
Drafted in 93 and pitching in the big leagues in 95.
The end of 95.
And, and you mentioned, so in college, not a lot of time for, the fun stuff, the hunting, the fishing, the off-season. Not much off-season. You mentioned that it changes a little bit when you become a pro.
Yep.
When you were in the majors, all those years, a decade in the major leagues, all those years with the Marlins, with the Astros, is that when you really began to have time to enjoy?
Yeah.
Did you come back home to hunt, or you go other places?
Yeah. No, we for the most part we did. We there was times where we lived in Houston and Dallas, but we always ended up back home during the off season for a month at least, or a couple of months. And I just I always loved duck hunting, and I had a chocolate lab named Reno, and he and I back then it was Panther Swamp, all these refuges. Now they've got it where you can't leave before 4. Well, man, people would camp out, they'd sleep in their trucks. So he and I, I was not single, I was married, we didn't have any kids.
Right.
So Reno and I would load up on a Wednesday morning or something, and, we'd go get in the duck hole at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he and I traveled all over the country. We went to Arkansas together, hunting, went all over. So that's really when I really started having some, I guess, time, you could say, to really hunt and enjoy it. And then once you get in the pro ball, you kind of have that off season to enjoy stuff like that.
Jay, we've talked to some people who are, career game wardens, wildlife fisheries parks folks, and I look at some of them and think like, how in the world are they lucky enough that this is what they do for a living in the woods and on the water?
I agree, man. Look,
but you, all right, you're pitching. You're a major league pitcher, right? This is before you had youngins. You got a wife and a dog, and in the off season, you can hunt all you want to hunt, and you can afford to hunt all you want to hunt. I mean, really,
the key is major leagues. Once you get in the minor leagues, you come home, you're a substitute teacher, or you're giving lessons or something. But no, you're right. And the off season, it's not. Look, I would take 3 weeks off. If we did not make the playoffs, I took the first 3 weeks of October. I didn't do anything like workout wise. As soon as the last week of October hit, I started back with my shoulder exercises, my arm strengthening stuff. And then after 2 weeks of that, I started back lifting. And after 2 weeks of lifting, I started back doing cardio. And then once the first week of December hit, I started my throwing program. So there wasn't a lot of downtime.
Sure.
But you had some free time where you could work around stuff and do it. Look, I know it's like you're talking about. I was going to play Major League Baseball and come back and host a hunting show. I was, I was all in.
All in.
And that's, it just was, it is. It gets in your blood and you love it. And the worst day of the year is the last day of duck season.
Which brings me to a point. I saw your post on your Facebook page, which I follow your Facebook page, by the way, and it's always pictures of killing something, pretty much.
Yeah.
Especially ducks.
Peter loves me.
Especially ducks.
Yeah.
But you did seem sort of like you were down in the dumps once duck season was over.
The picture of Forrest Gump when he gets through running. He says, "I think I'll go home now." And he's got this big old beard.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I feel in the duck season. Tired, nasty. My truck's nasty. Yeah. My dog's lost 20 pounds. But it is, man. It's when you close your eyes and you see mallards coming in, and it's tough then duck season for me.
All right. So obviously the time of year for duck season sort of fits what we talked about, your career in baseball. And you mentioned there, you close your eyes. It's like a diehard fisherman. We close our eyes, and when we were a kid, we could see the cork bobbing out there. You see ducks flying. What is it though about duck hunting? Like, if you were to break it down, what is it that gets under your skin so much?
Look, if you're a duck, you've had some horrible duck hunts. We all have. It's just when you get to a point where you've kind of, you never figure it out. But, the first thing I think is from a family and a social standpoint, deer hunting's different. I love to deer hunt, but you're in a stand, you're quiet. Duck hunting, it's more social. You're talking some, it's
eating
just,
a little more.
You got a honey bun, a Coke Zero, and you're eating. But it's just more the social aspect of it. But it's just, when you're working ducks, you're calling the ducks, and, you make them do what you want them to do. That's, I don't know, man. You know how it is. It's like pitching. People ask me if I miss baseball all the time, and I say I miss the one-on-one competition, and I miss the 1st and 15th, which was paydays. But it's kind of like that with duck hunting, when you kind of make them do what you want to do, and you figuring it out, and you're on them, and it's just, man, it's nothing. Like I said, I close my eyes, and I can see that mallard banking in, and it's just tough, man. It's tough to. It's gonna be tough. I don't know. It's gonna be tough when I'm gone, I guess. But it's a lot of fun.
So Jay, calling. Mm-hmm. Scale of 1 to 10 in terms of proficiency, and this is asking you to brag on yourself.
Yeah.
Where are you on that scale?
As far as like
the ability to work that call.
I think I'm okay. I'm not a professional, and I tell guys this all the time that come and hunt with me. We've got a running joke that I'm gonna get a sign that says, "If you're a guest, please leave your calls in the truck." And it's not because of what they sound like. It's just I know how those do, and whether it's my kids, my nephew, and my daughters. I mean, they've all hunted enough with me, and we know where we want to turn the ducks to make sure they can get in the hole. We know where we want to do certain things, and because we've hunted there. Uh-huh. And it's just my opinion. There's a whole lot better duck hunters than I am, but it's when you call is just as important sometimes as how you call. And there's just you'll get guys and they're working, they're committed, and all of a sudden they'll blow them out of the hole, blow them in the face, or there's some days to where they're somewhat committed, but you kind of gotta softly call to them and bring them on in. I mean, it's just. Yeah. I mean, it's when you call is to me just as important sometimes as what you sound like.
So maybe a baseball analogy would be just because you can throw 196 mile an hour doesn't necessarily mean you should throw it.
Because you got a good fastball, you got to know to locate it, and that's
and when to locate.
That's right, and it's it's kind of like pitch sequence. You got to know what to throw in certain counts and certain sequences as far as the way the hitter reacts. So it's the same thing to do with duck hunting. I mean, you're watching the way that duck reacts to certain calls and what he's doing, and where and you're trying to make it as easy as you can for him to get to where you can shoot, and that's what I'm trying to do. And look, I'm no expert at all. We've had some good, it's the old TK and Mike thing. If you want to kill big deer, you got to have a good place. Yeah, we got a good place, and we got a place where, for the most part, ducks like to be, and that makes a big difference.
What can you tell me about your place?
It's in Belzona, Humphreys County. That's about all anybody knows.
Yeah, that's all anybody knows. I wondered if those spots are like as secretive as the fishing spots.
I own the place. I bought it probably 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah. It's in Humphreys County, and when I bought it, it was it was a mess. It really was. It had been in the family for a long time, and just the one of the older guys, gentleman's passed away. Loved it. It was his baby. Mm-hmm. Kind of gotten just neglected a little bit. So we had to go in and we had to put new control structures in. We put in pipes and risers, rebuilt levees, and honestly, for the first 2 to 3 years, we chased water. We had what we called our south hole was really good, but we never consistently couldn't get the water right. I mean, and it's the way it laid out, it's hard to really just shoot a grade and say, okay, we got to build this up, because when it's really good, it pushes up into the woods. And the ducks will hit, they'll feed in the woods, they'll feed all over. We got millet. But it took us about 3 years of chasing water. We thought we got it right, and it ran out over here. And so we kind of we still ain't got it perfect. And then we had the thing I loved about this place, it had 100 acres of ag land, which if you have ag land, it's kind of unencumbered. You can do whatever you want to on it. So we land formed about 40 acres of it and levied it up and kind of split it. And we plant corn on one end and we plant millet on the other. And millet's kind of a warm weather food for them. And for us, we don't get a lot of cold weather. Right. And but now, like in January, they'll get in corn, and that's when we've usually killed them in corn. Flooded corn, not thrown out of 50-pound bags. Don't get me wrong.
Let's be clear on that.
Let's be clear. But we've flooded, because it's a cold weather food for them. Yeah. And that's been good. But and that's the part too, though, that I enjoy. It's a whole management deal of it. Same thing with our deer. When we got there, we saw, me and my nephew and my son would joke around that we saw the same spike and the same doe. It's like it was shot down and they killed everything on it. And it took us about 5 years, but we kept saying, look, we got food, genetics, they're here. Mm-hmm. We got everything we need to grow big deer. We just got to get age. And it took about 4 years. And after about 3 to 4 years, we've killed some really nice deer. This year wasn't. I'm blaming the drought. I think a lot of the deer just didn't get the nutrients from the soil because of the drought. I don't know. But it's like for us, and I've talked to a lot of people this year, that it seems like there was a missing class It's like, you know what I'm saying? We're missing the 4 and 5 year olds.
Right.
It was a weird deer season. It really was.
And you're hearing that from a lot of folks.
You're going to have a lot of people that it's just, you know, normally we have 2 or 3 deer on camera, and usually we get one like, oh, man, he's really good. But that was not the case this year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You use the word manage, obviously, when you were talking about your land. And, you know, I can't help it, but I'm always, you know, I see these analogies. It kind of runs parallel with baseball. But as you were talking about all that, Jay, I'm thinking, okay, now you're a coach. It's so similar to baseball in that you got to have the right ingredients. So you got to have some players with talent. But there's all this work over years that goes on behind the scenes that nobody ever sees. And then, but they see the end result if it all comes together. And then something changes on you. And you got to keep on tweaking and working on it.
Yeah, you got to keep adapting.
Same in baseball.
Same as baseball. You know, it's like the other day we were pulling boards out of duck holes, and my wife was with me, and she's like, and I had a big long screwdriver because, you know, you put the boards in, you spray foam, put the boards in before the water hits it. And so you've got to drive that screwdriver between the boards and get that foam busted up. And she said, "Are you hammering underwater?" And I said, "This is what people don't see. You know, it's just, this is, you know, you're sweating. It's February. It's cold, but you're wet. And, you know, and it's just, folks don't see that. Sure. And, but it's kind of a labor of love. You know, I do enjoy it. And it's you know, everything that I feel like too is, and look, I've bought 3 tracts of land in my life from baseball, thank God. And I was blessed to do it. And by far it's been the best investments I've made. And I just feel like as we go, like you're doing something that's going to be great for the wildlife, but also you're increasing the value of your land. So it's a labor of love.
Sure. Jay, you obviously you mentioned getting to meet people in Major League Baseball, teammates, guys you played against, all that. Do you have guys that you hunted together or you had those outings together? Famous athletes, opponents, those kinds of folks?
Well, teammates. And you know we would go, I mean, you know, when I was with Houston, we had a lot, you know, we had Scott Ellerton, who was from Colorado, Bill Spires, who's now one of the football coaches at Clemson, because he kicked there. He's on Dabo, or whatever.
Yeah, Dabo's
staff. Bill was from South Carolina. Russ Johnson was from LSU. Doug Henry's from Wisconsin. We had about 7 or 8 guys that were hunters. And we had an off day, and like, when you go to play the Brewers, you play Milwaukee, Chicago, always, or Chicago, Milwaukee. We ended up having an off day between that. And so we found some guy up in Wisconsin and did like a pheasant shoot and all this. We've shot teal in Winnie, Texas for the Astros when we were playing out there. I mean,
So y'all would go on a pheasant hunt on an off day between series in Chicago and Milwaukee.
We did. And you know, we told us, look, we got nothing. We went to like a Walmart and bought some cheap jeans and shirts and you know, some like boots or something. And he said, "I got everything you need." And so he had guns and shells and all that. And we went and we rented a car and drove up and hunted that morning, hunted that afternoon, and drove back.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, you know, we always just see Milwaukee. But man, that's like, that part of the country is some of the most beautiful country once you get out of there. We played golf one time up in Kohler, Wisconsin, where I guess all the bathroom stuff is from. But man, some of the most beautiful country. It really is. And big deer and, you know, game, it's beautiful.
You also mentioned your family. So tell me about your youngins. It sounded like you got them involved in the outdoors too.
Oh yeah. They my oldest is 27, I guess. And he loves it. He's you know, he grew up with me hunting. They all 3 of them did. I got a boy, a daughter, and another son, and they've all sat in stands with me. They've all gone fishing with me. They've all gone offshore fishing with me. They've all been in duck blinds with me. I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of the way we've always done it. And now we've got a little, you know, camp up there, and pretty much on Fridays, that's where we're all headed. And toward the end of the year, you know, my wife starts pulling her hair out because it's muddy and nasty, and you know, she's like, "Well, I'm ready for a break." And I don't ever say it, but I'm like, I am too. You know, I'm getting tired. But that's where we all go, you know. And they've brought their girlfriends and boyfriends, and we've got a little chair basically, and I know you've seen them you'll see them at baseball games where they're sitting in a chair and they got a little thing that folds up and it's a cover.
Right.
Well, Marsh or somebody makes one for duck hunting. So it comes up and it's got a little deal in front. It's almost like a curtain. It's all camo, of course, mesh and all this. Yeah. And it's got a little slit. So, I've got the dog in his little stand, and then when the wife comes, I'll put her chair because she just wants to be with the dog. So she'll sit by Rocky now, and we'll put her little thing, and she just, she can sit down there and drink coffee, and it's so it's gotten to be a family deal.
That is really, really neat.
Yeah, and friends, I have friends that hunt with me, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you mentioned sort of the camaraderie earlier of the duck blind, and I've seen again some of the pictures that you shared from this duck season, and several groups, lots of young folks, like you and other dads, and I did remember thinking, boy, what a neat deal for you and other dads that you get together as a group and do it sort of as a team. Almost.
Yeah. Well, and when my youngest, of course, plays baseball for me at prep, he, and he'll bring his friends who plays for me, which, I'm still kind of, when we get down there, I'm coach, still. So we were having a slow day one day in there, and we're in the duck, and they're teenage boys. They start, talking. They'll kind of get in a little huddle. And so we had a couple ducks come through, and they flared them. And I said, look, if y'all ain't going to hunt, go home. And so they thought I was kidding. Next group comes through, same thing's happened. I said, y'all out. So I kicked them all.
Kicked them out?
And they looked at it and said, are you really kicking us out? I said, go. Y'all can go cook breakfast. And they were, of course, laughing about it. But it was, it was late, and we wouldn't kill them anyway, so they were ready to get out.
All right. Well, again, this is coach's job to
That's
kind of
right.
keep everybody focused on the ball
keep them
game.
straight. We're trying. We got a job to do.
And speaking of coaching, too, I was thinking about that, right? So high school, college career, don't have much time, playing all year. Major league career, you're working in the winter, become a duck hunter, a little more freedom. You finally retired, okay? Last year, 04 in Texas, 05 a little bit in Atlanta, wrap it up after a decade in the majors. Retired, now I'm going to hunt full-time the rest of my life. And what do? You get into coaching.
You can't do it. You can't do it. You know how it is. I mean, you've got to have something. You can't. There's not enough fish to catch. It's just at the end of the day. I mean, you've got to. And this is just my opinion again. You've got to have something that challenges you. Mm-hmm. And hunting does. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you've got to have something that keeps you going and
competitively.
And just using your brain. Figuring things out and for me, it gives you some responsibility, and it's just, I don't know. I think that, and we always had it with pro ball, and we had these rookie deals and all that where somebody come and talk to you and this and that, and they always talk about the same thing. It's mostly your life after baseball, and it takes some adjustment, man. It really does, because I've had guys that retired after I did, similar age, and they would call me like, man, what do you do? Because it's like you're rolling, everybody's doing things for you, you're getting a big paycheck, and it ends. Mm-hmm. It ain't like, hey, I'm gonna retire next year. Some of the guys are great enough to do that, but for the rest of us, we don't get to call our shot. Mm-hmm. When it's over, it's over. They take it uniform, they give it to somebody else. And so it's an adjustment. And it takes you really about 2 to 3 years to kind of figure things out. Because it's, it's an adjustment for you, it's an adjustment for your family. And a lot of people, especially husband and wife, struggle because, it's fun when you come home, you see them for a week, you're out for 2 weeks, you're home for a week, making a lot of money, you're traveling, you're doing all that. And then all of a sudden all that ends and you're together every day. Mm-hmm. Every day. And now all of a sudden you're getting up, you're taking kids to school, you're buying groceries, so now, the things that most people do all their life, now all of a sudden you're 35 and you're looking around going, what the heck am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And all your friends from back home has a good job, they got something they're doing, and you're just like, I got to figure this out.
Sure.
I got to figure this out. And it can, that's why we see so many of our guys that get out of pro ball end up with substance problems or alcohol, because it is an adjustment. And I know people are sitting there going, dude, don't give me that. And I agree 100%. I was fortunate to play pro ball and make a good living doing it. But it can be an adjustment for all of us when we get out.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Last thing I have to ask you, a World Series question.
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever asked you this, Jay. Where's your World Series ring?
Most time it stays in my safe. You know what? The ring I've been fortunate to be I got one for States College World Series.
College World Series, yeah.
I've got numerous ones from Prep, which I'm very fortunate for. The one ring I wear more than any of them, and I don't know why really, is my Hall of Fame ring from Mississippi State.
Okay.
And I don't know why. It just fits me better. But it's just, to me, and even with Coach Polk, when we had the Ring of Honor up there, I mean, I said it then, I'll never make the Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball. This is my Hall of Fame. This, because of what, one, that place means to me, that's how much that meant to me. But they're all, for the most part, staying safe. I mean, you can see I've got a rubber, looks like a washer you put in a hydrant outside on a faucet, and a watch. I mean, that's the most jewelry you'll about ever see on me.
And so you're in the Ring of Honor, named after the guy who cut you on USA Baseball.
That's right. That's right. And I'm gonna be honest, I've really enjoyed. I've always kind of been close to Coach, but he and I do the radio together. Sure. And I mean, it's just been a blessing for me to be able to spend more time with him and Jim, and they're just couldn't ask for two better people. And getting to know Coach more the last 2 to 3 years has been a blessing. I always call him on his birthday, and I not just to wish him for a happy birthday, but to hear his voicemail. And I don't know if you called him.
I did it this year.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of beauty.
So he does that every year.
Every year. This is Ron Polk. Today's my birthday, and it goes on for about a minute and a half.
And he says, "Look, I normally want to call people back, but they spam me every year on my birthday. I can't possibly call everybody back, so I'm sorry." Yeah,
they will. And I'll leave a message, Coach. Don't call me back.
Right.
I'm just wishing you a happy birthday.
Yeah.
But he's awesome.
Yeah, he really is. Well, you're awesome too, and I really do appreciate your time, Jay.
This is fun. Like I said, I'd much rather talk hunting and fishing.
Yeah, and the next time we'll have you back, we'll do deer hunting, and then we'll have you back and we'll do bass fishing.
That's right.
And then we'll mix in a little baseball.
I know you love bass fish.
Yes.
Don't start saltwater fishing.
I've heard that.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm warning you. We and we can talk about this later, but I always loved bass fish.
Yeah.
And when I retired, I had a buddy who said, "You need to start red fishing." And I said, I ain't doing that. And I had a friend of mine from Texas, Dennis Cook, said the same thing when we played. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy took me red fishing one day in a bass boat, and I got back to the dock, and I said 2 things. I'm never going back in that bay in this bass boat because I almost died. And I said, I'm selling this bass boat and I'm buying me a bay boat. Uh-huh. I mean, it's like bass fishing on steroids.
I can understand it. I was years ago fishing in a bass tournament in a bass boat in the Louisiana Delta. We put in at Slidell, ride an hour like into Delacroix.
Oh, yeah.
I go up in a little, open-ended canal somewhere. I'm throwing a little bitty shallow crankbait trying to catch bass, and we were catching some. And all of a sudden, I get struck, and it goes from one side of that canal to the other with a big wake, and I'm hanging on, and it comes back. Long story short, it was about a 15-pound redfish, which, yeah. And I get it up the side of the boat, picture all this kind of stuff and throw it back. And then it hit me in that moment. I've spent all this money, come all this way to get ready for a bass tournament. But I think I'd rather catch those right now. Yeah, if those are in here, so I can understand how that would get under your skin.
It does. It does. And I love it. And honestly, I haven't freshwater fished hardly as much ever since, because we'll go down there 3 or 4 times a year, and I've got friends with camps down there, and we'll go fish with them. And same thing with speckled trout. Trout fishing's awesome. And then that's a show. But we went from a 22-foot boat to 10 years later, I've got a 35-foot contender, and we're catching tuna and trying to. It's just
one outboard or 2 on there.
2.
Yeah.
It was just too much.
I got to
stop, man. I got to stop. Too many hobbies. I got to give something up.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, don't give it up. I know you're not giving baseball up. And we really enjoy hearing you on the radio, and really do appreciate you joining the podcast.
Absolutely, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. Jay Powell on the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast, talking fishing and baseball. What is better? Oh, and duck hunting. What is better this time of year? I'm Matt Wyatt. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you outdoors.